Eishes chayil mi yimtza v'rachok mi pnimim michra botach bale ba'ala v'shalola yachzar balasuto v'lora kol yemei chayeha dor shotzemer ufishtim batas v'chevetz kapeha kobu vanel v'yashrua v'ayla v'yahalala rabos bonosa suchoyel v'ato lis al kulana sheker achein v'hevel hayofi isha yiras adonai hitis halal Tnula mi priyadeha v'halalua basharim maseha. We're here today to pay our respects, our kavod achron, to a very special woman. Peril Bas Yosef Mordechai, a devoted mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, and a friend. Truly the end of an era. There are so few survivors of the Holocaust that are still here today. I still have memories when I drive by occasionally down Bushnell and I pass 4201 Bushnell, and for that matter 4241 Bushnell, both her home, the Simon home, and the Marks home. A lot of fun memories. Pepi had that flavor of being a true Europäische Mama, a European mother and grandmother. Her accent, her outlook on life, how she doted, how she treated her husband like a king. I remember from her days at the youth center. She davened together with her sister, Celia Shalom, and all the other women there that were her old friends, visiting her at her home first when her husband Joseph was alive, and then visiting her after he passed away. Always made me feel very much at home. Always came in, asked me about my family, how I was doing. She was really like a mother to me in many, many ways. Many of the women of the youth center I felt were like my mothers, and their husbands like my fathers. You felt a sense of serenity in her presence, and reminded of the beautiful Medrash. The Medrash comments, the Medrash tells us, Haroa kedera b'chalom, if you see a plate or a pot in a dream, yitzapel l'shalom, you should hope, you should yearn for peace. Haroa nahar b'chalom, if you see a river in your dream, yitzapel l'shalom, you should yearn for peace. Haroa tzipor b'chalom, if you see a bird in your dream, yitzapel l'shalom, you should hope for peace. The Ksaf Sofer, one of the great rabbis of a few hundred years ago, a very interesting insight. He said there's peace in different levels. There's peace at home, shalom bayis. There's peace in your community. And then there's peace in the world. So he said the symbolism of the pot is you hope and pray that there should be peace at home. There should be shalom bayis. People should get along in their families. And then the next level, of course, is peace in the community. You hope you live in a community that's peaceful. People get along, coexist properly. And of course, we all yearn for shalom ba'olam, peace in the world. So that's the symbolism. The plate, the pot symbolizes at home what goes on in your home, personal life. The river as it flows in your community. And then, of course, the bird that flies the world. Certain people give off that sense of serenity and peace. I found Pepi to be one of those. Always felt comfortable, always felt everything was very calm. That was her nature. Calm, sweet, unassuming kind of person. We're all familiar with the verse, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, that one is supposed to love your friend like yourself. Rav Hutner once commented, a true V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha is someone who gives off love, and as a result, the love is reciprocated back to them. They give off love, you sense when you're in their presence a sense of love and care and kindness, and it works the other way. You feel it back from them as well. I always felt that with Pepi. Even as of late, maybe not visiting her as often as I should, but whenever I would come, she made me feel like $1 million, because if I walked in and she would say, "Hi, Rabbi," I knew that despite how weak she was, she didn't forget me. She made me feel at home. Didn't say much. It's hard for her to talk, hard for her even to keep her eyes open, but she just made me feel so much at home when I came to visit her. But her greatest love was her family. I remember how she doted, how she took care of her husband, and how she would smile if you talked about her family, her children, and their spouses, and the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren. It meant so much to her. Here's a woman who literally rebuilt her life went through the horrors of the Holocaust, came here, quiet, in her own unassuming way, and built a beautiful family, built a fortress. I will miss her on a very personal level, not only as a congregant. Again, I asked Mechila if I didn't visit her enough, which I probably should have visited her more often. But just as someone who, as I said, I felt like she was like a mother to me. Maybe it's because I lost my mother when I was young. But I felt that she was like a mother. She made me feel so much at home in her own caring and doting way, asking of me about myself, my family, my children, what they were up to. And lately, maybe not as much, but just knowing how much she cared about me and about everyone else. May she be a Melitza Yosher. She has a lot of schusim, a lot of merits. Anyone who went through the Holocaust has lots of merits, but she went through a lot in her life. And that she kept that positive attitude and that beautiful smile till the end. May she be a Melitza Yosher for her beautiful family, for our community, and most importantly, for the Jewish people, for the world around us. I'd like to ask a few members of the family to share some personal thoughts. First, her grandson, Bradley. Please share a few thoughts.
Thank you, Rabbi. Hello, everyone. I love my Bubby. She was kind-hearted, loving, and full of light. A beautiful soul. I'm very grateful I was able to have had this relationship in my life. One summer, when I was 8 years old, we played tennis together. She was surprisingly good, coordinated. In my 8-year-old jumbled imagination, I remember her flying around the court, hitting ground strokes while wearing a starch white cooking apron. Not accurate. Great day. Her smile, her laughter, and her joy were special to experience. As a child, visiting her home was like entering another dimension for me. So different. Like a day trip to an Eastern European village. Delicious, strange food we didn't get anywhere else. Colorful vegetables growing in the garden. Picture frames of unknown relatives dressed in unusual clothing. Mysterious languages spoken. House had windows open in the summer, humid, no air conditioning allowed. Freezing cold in the winter, no heat. I'd snoop around the house looking for treasure. I'd find hidden compartments built into the cabinetry, filled with cash and jewelry. I'd show my Zaidi what I found. He'd yell at my mom, "For what does he have to touch everything?" Bubby would get worried, tell me to put it back fast. Underlying all those memories was a heavy, profound sadness in the house. I could feel it even as a child. It lingered like the musty smell of antique wooden furniture and fabric. My grandmother went through some truly terrible moments as a young woman in wartime Europe. She was put in impossible situations. She made life and death difficult decisions that affected her and others. She was still so very young and impressionable. She often had no good options. She was very brave, but never saw it that way. She was traumatized. It hurt her. Because of this, she was hard on herself her entire life. It limited and conflicted her ability to receive love even from those she cared for most. She coped and held tight to her faith. She took comfort in religion, and it took the edge off of her anxiety enough to keep on going. She loved her family deeply. Her sadness would sometimes get in the way of her expressing herself and how she truly felt in her heart. It frustrated her. We loved her just the way she was. She was a real character, loving, sweet, and as sneaky as can be sometimes. She'd kiss and hug you, make you lunch, and then drop a question on you that she already knew the answer to. Pretend she didn't know the answer, and then play dumb about it. just so she could see what you would say and compare it to the information she already had. I loved her, and she will always have a place in my heart. I wish her peace, freedom from fear and worry. I hope she's allowing herself to receive the light and grace that she herself always had and had been such a beautiful part of. Thank you.
Carly?
Thank you for coming. What a daunting task to distill 96 years into a few minutes. My Bubby lived not just through ages, but through eras. There's not enough time to even touch on everything she experienced, and it would never be enough to describe her adequately anyway. Many of you knew Pepi Simon as a sweet, gentle old lady, but she was a powerhouse. She survived Hitler's final solution by being scrappy and strong. Before Michelle Obama ever had made biceps on women popular, Bubby's life of hard labor had resulted in sculpted arms. When I was a kid, I recall her being in constant motion. We'd walk into Bubby and Zaidi's house. She'd insisted we stay and eat. She was happy to bake a batch of her famous one-chip cookies or latkes or anything we asked for. She buzzed around the kitchen and made a fuss over us like we were esteemed guests. Sometimes people say, "It's a pleasure to serve you." Bubby never had to say it because she demonstrated it every time we visited. She was ahead of her time in other ways as well. Before going green was a trending hashtag, Bubby recycled every jar and container. Looking in their refrigerator always involved some speculation. I know that's a cream cheese tub, but it could contain anything from applesauce to latkes. Unpredictably delicious surprises were everywhere. There were times in her life when she literally had nothing to eat. She stuffed us full so that we would never have to endure that hardship. She fed us love. Some of her light dimmed when we lost Zaidi 9 years ago this month. They had been married for 65 years at that point. That's over half a century of losing their families, escaping the war, building a new life in a foreign country and in a new language. Together they raised 4 capable women who produced 7 grandchildren and 9 great-grandchildren, bearing witness to the interaction of 4 generations born out of survivors is nothing short of a phenomenon. Bubby continued to take meticulous care of her husband until he moved into the next world, and her example of selfless support and attention can be seen in the generous care her daughters bestowed on her. My mother and her sisters, Pam and Marilyn, and my Bubby's tireless caregivers, Shoshana, Lucy, and Irina, exhibited immense kindness and enormous compassion in looking after my Bubby as her health failed in recent years. My mother and my aunts displayed incredible dedication to their mother and set the bar very high. Mommy, you are the daughter every daughter strives to be. For the rest of my life, I know I will fondly replay in my head all the maxims that Bubby liked to drop into conversations. When I would complain about nonsense, Zaidi might wave me off and tell me it's Narishkeit. But Bubby would listen quietly and then say something like, life is a bumpy road, Mamala. It was kind of a corollary to the classic man plans, God laughs, which she delivered in Yiddish. But perhaps my fondest Bubbyism is, a fish and a bird could fall in love, but where would they live? I'm not sure if this was relationship advice or real estate guidance, but she always made me think. Bubby, You took care of me when I stayed homesick from school. You taught me how to think creatively and accept what I cannot control in life. And you demonstrated what true love and devotion look like. You will always be a part of me.
Paul?
Thank you all for coming. It's really a tribute to see such a full room. Most of my Bubby's life, the vast majority of it, was, as Einstein phrased it, a life lived for others. She was a daughter, a sister, a wife, a mother, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother. I could talk about her life before, during, and after the war, but she already did. Anyone can hear her tell her own story since she recorded it for Spielberg's Survivors of the Shoah video archive. Instead, I will tell you about my own most vivid memory of my Bubby. When I was 16, she hired me to work with her in the kitchen at Green Road Synagogue, which catered simchas. There was always, predictably, a lot of rushing around in the kitchen, but also a predictable lull. When the celebrating family was dancing, the kitchen had a break, and Bubby would stand in the kitchen doorway watching the families dance. Event after event, she would watch the groomsmen circle and stomp, see the gossamer-clad bride lifted aloft. I felt that seeing these celebrations must have sparked many memories for her. I hope that they also warmed her heart. After all the devastation she had witnessed, she now got to see a thriving, joyous Jewish community upon. And that's what she did, build. As surely as my Zaidi built structures with his hands, she built a family with hers. We often hear the idea that the Jewish world was rebuilt from ashes. But ashes are almost impossible to build with. So Bubby used something more substantive, food. She cooked for her family at home and for the community at Green Road. Today, I work for a Jewish newspaper in Chicago, and for a while, I wrote obituaries. Bubby was a survivor, but in obituaries, we talk about who someone is survived by. Bubby is survived by 4 daughters and their husbands, 7 grandchildren, and 9 great-grandchildren. That's what she built. Out of flour, eggs, oil, salt, and potatoes, lots of potatoes, grated by hand. And now those hands are still. So our hands must be busy writing the next chapters of our family story. Good night, Bubby. Take a nice long rest. God knows you've earned it.
Daughter Pam.
My mother, Pepi Simon, was a survivor of untold horrors in World War II. I have no recollection of when or how I learned about the Holocaust or that she survived Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. It was just always a part of her, an ingrained sadness as well as a source of her tenacity and strength. She survived and even thrived in a land where she had to learn a new language, start a new family, and work long hours in order to provide us with a comfortable home and educational opportunities. For me, that meant access to a Jewish education, attending Camp Stone, and going off to college and grad school. Bubby, we all called her Bubby after the grandchildren started to arrive, was always ready to babysit or do your laundry. She could whip up a plate of latkes in minutes, and they were always devoured in minutes. She had chocolate chip cookies always on hand, and as Carly told you, that was single chip in the cookie. No one ever left a visit hungry. When I was in school, she volunteered at the Hebrew Academy Library, at the B'nai Akiva Carnival, and at the Young Israel Yom HaAtzmaut breakfast. In later years, thank you, she volunteered at the Young Israel office for the bulletin mailings and she served lunches at Fuchs Mizrahi, where her grandchildren were attending. She was never one to seek attention, but she was always glad to be of service, preferably in the background. Friends were welcome at our house, after school or for a Shabbaton. She always wanted to know more about them and their families. She had a wonderful memory, even asking about our friends and their children just last week. Bubby was always an active person. She was not one to sit idle. If she wasn't cooking or baking, she was washing or ironing or raking leaves or sewing or planting in the garden, even into her 90s. She loved to sit outside in the sunshine, to water her tomatoes and her roses, and to hang the laundry to dry in the fresh air. In her later years, she kept busy taking care of my father, her Yussel, so he could live at home until his last day, just the way he wanted. It was very hard to see her decline over the past year. To go from her active self to being restricted to bed was very difficult, yet she did not complain. She made it out to the sukkah with a lot of effort just one time last year, and then she asked to come back inside. That was hard for me to hear about. She continued to bench candles every Friday and would sing along with Shalom Aleichem, and even had me singing Azmira with her just 2 weeks ago. She was able to celebrate her 96th birthday surrounded with her children, her grandchildren, and her great-grandchildren in December. Her face just lit up whenever the children arrived. Her face also lit up whenever visitors came, and we thank all of you who asked about her and who visited when she had so few contemporaries left. On behalf of our family, I want to express the Hakarat Hatov, the gratitude to so many people. Foremost, to my sister Ruthie and brother-in-law Kenny, who welcomed my mother into their home, making it her home for the past 5 years. This was not an easy undertaking, but they accomplished it with great love and kindness and respect. She had homemade meals, a beautiful room, and fresh flowers all the time. I thank my husband Eric and my children for being understanding all the times I rushed out the door or off the phone so I could get to see Bubby quick before she goes to sleep. I thank my sisters Marilyn and Janet and their husbands for sending love and support from afar these past few months, and we are also grateful to the Bikur Cholim Gila program and the Jewish Family Services Europa program for providing my mother with activity and companionship in her later years. We cannot say enough about the JFSA Holocaust Survivors Program, which provided my mother with phenomenal aid services and nursing so to care for her as she wanted. Irina, Shoshana, Lucy, Gayan, and Leah, we offer you our love and our respect for the kind and gentle care you provided for Pepi every day. She was grateful for you every day. We thank you, Rabbi Bernstein, for visiting often and always with a smile. My mother was always happy to tell me, you know, the rabbi came in today. And finally, we thank Montefiore Hospice for their services in providing my mother with loving, comforting, and dignified care in this final phase of her life. I will miss my mother terribly, and I hope that I can remember even half of what she tried to teach me every day until her last day. After working so hard to survive and to thrive, may she rest in Gan Eden.
Please rise for the Kel Mali Rachmim.
El Molei Rachamim Shochein B'Maromim Hamitzvei Menucha Nechana Al על כנפי השכינו במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הורקיה מזהירים עשה נשמס פרל בס יוסף ומרדכי שלחו לעולמו בעבור שאנחנו מתפללים ביד אזכורת נשמוסו בגן עדן תהא מנוחסו לכן בעל רחמים יסתירהו בססר כנופו ולעולמים ביצרור בצרור החיים עשה נשמוסו אדוני הוא נחלו עשו ושנוח בשלום בשלום על משכבו ונאמר אמן.
You may be seated. Schedule is as follows. The burial, the Kfur will be at the Young Israel section of Zion Memorial Park. Shiva will be at the home of Kenny and Ruthie Weeder, 4433 Churchill Boulevard, until next Wednesday morning. The schedule is as follows. This evening, the Shiva hours will be from 7 to 9. Tomorrow, Friday, Erev Shabbos, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Motzi Shabbos, 7:30 to 9. Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, 12 to 5 and 7 to 9. There will be no minyanim at the Shiva house.